This morning, introductory speaker is Donald Stockton. Donald served 4 years active duty in the Fleet Navy. He is currently a drilling reservist with Navy Mobile Construction Battalion 18. He's basically a SEAL. I was not supposed to say that. He currently serves as a vital outreach tech at our campuses. Please, everyone, help me welcoming Mr. Donald Stockton.
Good morning, thank you. So my average lecture or presentation length is about an hour, so you guys only have to suffer for about 10 minutes. Count yourselves lucky. So, like many of you, I had a mentor that was instrumental in my decision to join the military. My mentor was Hospital Corpsman Chief Bob Dans, who was my naval science instructor at Reed High School when I was in school. Some of you might know or remember Chief Dans, and you know how much of an impact a strong leader can have on you. I joined the Navy in May of 2000 and shipped to RTC Great Lakes in August of that same year. I originally joined to be a hospital corpsman like Chief Dans, but while at boot camp I was summoned by my recruit division commander to be reclassed. So I trotted like a happy little recruit into an office that I'd never been in before, and they told me I had to pick a new job. There were no seats in that A school for hospital corpsman, unfortunately. While I had been assured by my test scores that I could do whatever I wanted, I'm also colorblind. If anybody's not familiar with what it's like to be colorblinded in the military, it's kind of like going to technical high school. It's kind of like people tell you could do anything, and then they tell you can do 9 things. So I got to choose between being an undesignated seaman or an undesignated fireman, which boils down to deciding whether or not you're going to be in a room full of the smell of lube oil and sweat, or maybe some fresh air. Despite the fact that I'm ginger, I do like fresh air and sunshine, so I picked being a deck seaman. That got me orders to a guided missile cruiser out of Norfolk called the USS Anzio. A fun fact, I requested Fallon, San Diego, and England. It's at this period that I discovered what subject to the requirements of the service means. The initial experience I had actually really greatly influenced my decision to get out of the Navy as soon as my contract was over. But while I was on board that ship, I did 6 transatlantic passages, 2 Baltic operations, a whole lot of training evolutions, and did do a deployment in support of the invasion of Iraq in 2003. If anybody was boots on the ground at the time, we had that funny whizzing sound and the big boom at the end. Those were our Tomahawks. But in 2004, I left the fleet as a bosun mate 2nd class, and I had a mix of pride and frustration about my service. My initial transition was a mixed bag of bumps in the road, poor decisions, good decisions, and eventually successes, but it's important to remember that failure is a better teacher than success. After returning home from my time aboard ship, I enrolled at TMCC and started to reintegrate to the civilian life. I was living with my parents at the time, kind of felt like a step back from being so far away and independent. So I stepped right back into the job market trying to get a job and move back out on my own. I lucked out pretty quick. I found out that I was super marketable as a big, tall guy who could lift things above his head. Those jobs are the backbone of our infrastructure, and our society can't really function without them. But one thing to remember is that if your real backbone is actually damaged by time in the military, it's not a good idea to make that your career. So I felt it was time to make a change later on. But first, I didn't have a clear objective in school. That lack of focus, and then I was making easy money lifting big things, eventually led to that core humanities isn't as fun as money. So I left school after 1 semester. 3 years of warehouses, loading docks, and digging ditches eventually led me to make that change I was talking about earlier. And I thought the best thing to do initially was actually to try to go back on active duty. I discussed it with a recruiter, and he told me that reserve duty might be a better idea. That was actually the best path for me. I eventually got reclassed again as a steelworker, and joined the Seabees. But I also got an enlistment bonus, and this was in 2008, right as the economy tanked. So it was perfect timing. Parallel to that, I re-enrolled in school, and I started my undergraduate studies in history. Question always comes up: what is a history degree good for? And I'll actually address that in a little bit. But a very important point, if I had gone back on active duty, I wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have my 2 little boys right now, and my life would be very much different. If you're not familiar with the CBs, we measure our success really in square footage. We've got a couple CB vets in this room. We build dining facilities, joint operation control centers, laundries, anything you can think of that makes the mission work well for combat troops. And in 2009, my reserve unit was pegged to join a troop surge, and I spent July 2010 to February 2011 as boots on the ground in Kandahar. My deployment experience differs significantly from some of our combat vets that have been up here before, but serving soldiers and Marines is our mission. We do that to make sure that their mission is accomplished without them having to worry about some of the other stresses of being in a combat zone. And that sense of service I've carried into my civilian career with great pride. I want to share one really important story from my deployment to Afghanistan that continues to kind of inform and inspire my sense of service. After building a series of wooden tent decks and installing some big tents on them, which those tents we discovered were packed and stored somewhere during Kosovo because of all the Serbian newspapers that were left inside. But an infantry unit rotated into our Camp Nathan Smith in Kandahar, and they needed a place to sleep. They hadn't made proper preparations, I guess. When they discovered that they were going to get a chance to sleep off the ground under something, they got pretty excited. There weren't any cots, there was no AC, no bells and whistles, period, and it was just a plywood slab under a big moldy tent. I tried to tell them that we could probably try to improve the situation a little bit more, but they assured me that their previous accommodations were a whole lot worse, and I can only assume there was a whoopee and a pile of rocks. I got trapped inside the wire the majority of my deployment, so seeing those conditions that they were describing to me was a real eye-opener, and it reestablished kind of my sense of commitment to try to serve them and improve their conditions. And finding that the smallest impact can have a huge impact on someone else's life is definitely continued to inspire me. And if they got a chance to sleep that night better than any other, then that's a win column for me. Another quick stat that I want to share, we built a dining facility on that FOB that took wait times from about an hour to 5 minutes. And I guess your average complaint could have been cut by about a third at that point, and probably went something like, the whole country smells like poop, and they shoot at us, but at least the chow line moves fast. And that's a CB victory. So. After I got back from Afghanistan, I jumped back into school, and I had a renewed drive to knock out my bachelor's degree and kind of get busy with real life. I previously met Perfecto Menuda in a yoga class at TMCC in 2007. You heard that right. I was in a yoga class, and that dude's name is Perfecto. After returning in 2011, I reconnected with him when he was the president of Wolfpack Vets. He offered me an opportunity to go to the Student Veterans of America conference in Las Vegas, and to be honest, who doesn't like a free trip to Vegas? And I'll let you know, people from Reno don't like a free trip to Vegas. But that proved to be a catalyst for me to re-engage in service to veterans. When I was there, I had the opportunity to watch former VA Secretary General Shinseki give a keynote speech. There has been some controversy surrounding General Shinseki, but his comments said they were really spot on in my opinion, so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, kind of the most important part. He said, if you think your country owes you an education, you have an attitude problem. They didn't do this for any generation since World War II until yours. If, on the other hand, you think you owe the American people who gave you wings via your academic success, I think we'll all come out better, veterans and the country. It was a message of responsibility that I took on board. I thought it was really important that we think about it in those terms and take our gift of education that we've received and make ourselves an asset to our communities. So I've made it made my path much clearer to me as I worked my way out of school. Just before I graduated in May of 2013, I was recommended by Adam Kress in the back there to apply for a new outreach program from the VA called the Vital. It's a good thing because history degrees don't provide a really clear path to employment. What they do give you is a lot of practice in written and oral communications, which is very important in outreach. VITAL stands for Veterans Integration to Academic Leadership. I'm convinced this is an acronym that kind of made its genesis similar to the way SHIELD made its genesis in the Avengers. I don't know. No one has explained it to me. So, the program is designed to support student veterans and help them transition into school more smoothly. The program provided me important insights to my own professional development and let me engage with a network of veterans who eventually made these events possible. It's been the most rewarding position I've had since I've been in the military, and I lost my spot. But it helped me identify my strengths and where to apply them. My transition, however, is not typical. I've discovered this as I integrated with a whole bunch of other veterans, and I found that the majority of the time they're going to have the same transitional struggles that they did when they moved out of the military. They have to all of a sudden graduate and time to contribute, time to get a job, time to be an adult. But they might not have networked properly. And I thought to myself, what was the difference for me? And it was because I went to those Wolfpack vet meetings. I made myself a resource to someone else that recognized that I would be a good candidate for this job that emerged, which, Troy? Soccer. Okay. So when the idea for Engage started to make its genesis between the student vets that eventually graduated and started the alumni chapter and then existing veteran leadership, I saw a real sea change happening for not just the vets, but also the community. I'm going to wrap this up by saying I see our mission kind of changing as we move forward. It's in our nature to think of other people before ourselves, and we often overlook our own needs to find really great opportunities for fellow veterans. I periodically joke that I've actually gotten really great high-paying positions for people, way higher than my own, but as far as I'm concerned, that's a mission accomplished, so I tend to be happier about it than I am sad. What we do need to do now, though, is turn outward. Veterans have always looked out for our own in some way, and many of us already serve our communities, and we can confidently say that our time in the military made that happen for us. But sometimes we also like to think to ourselves, we did our time, it's time to step away from service. But the veterans in this room aren't that group. They're the ones who have committed to pledge a portion of themselves to other people. And I hope we see this approach become a new model that empowers the veterans in this room and maybe veterans in other communities to become the most valuable assets in their communities. And I look forward to serving with all of you. Thank you.